Alright, with my 22 Magnum video, I think there was some sort of disconnect with me and the viewer, because I got a lot of the same comments, and I think the problem is I didn't pull out the whiteboard of knowledge. So alright, the 22 Magnum has problems, especially in handguns. There are some rifles, and they use different systems, like Magnum Research uses a gas diffuser block, etc, etc, etc. Then you got the PMR-30 that uses basically the M9 action. It's basically a locking action. Because what the problem is... Alright, so this is your blowback. Your bullets in there. The explosion happens. You need the force going against the casing to be stronger than the force that the bullet trying to go down an undersized tube is going to cause. Because the slide absolutely needs to stay closed until the bullet exits. If it prematurely opens, it takes a whole lot less force to just blow through the side of the casing than it does to continue to push the bullet down the bore. But it's only that initial moving where it becomes a problem. Once it's going down, you're already over the hill, you're good to go. Bullet exits, that creates thrust, all the gas is exiting out, which pushes back on the casing, which pulls the slide out of battery, ejects the casing, rinse and repeat. So where it becomes a problem, now I'm going to make up some numbers here. Let me grab my Sharpie. So let's say a 22 Magnum is twice as powerful as a 22 long rifle. Now, I don't know if it actually is or not. You can bust out your own calculator and figure out the difference. So we're dealing with twice as much power. So you're going to need twice as much force on the slide pushing forward, which would be fine until you run into the length that it needs to go. So, alright, you got to deal with twice as much force, and now it needs to travel almost a half of an inch farther than it would if it was a 22 long rifle. And that's where it gets weird. So this needs to be... This has to go basically a half an inch less than this, but this requires, we're going to pretend that the 22 Magnum is twice as powerful, twice as much force going on there. So the problem isn't getting rid of the power. I mean, you can get a blowback in a 45 9mm, which has exponentially more power than a 22 Magnum. The problem is that it needs to travel farther. A 9mm action doesn't even need to travel as far as a 22 long rifle. So once we get past the point, okay, we got the bullet down there, now we need to push all this force and everything to the rear with the thrust that it makes. Now, there's probably some sort of mathematical equation, which I have no idea what it is, so we're just going to put a little question mark here. But it's how the thrust is made. So you got the size of the port and the amount of gases going through it, so the volume. How much volume is coming out of here, and the size of the hole diameter is going to dictate how much thrust it can push back on the casing, activating the slide, which is the same size as a 22 long rifle. Without going with a bigger diameter bore and more gases, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems getting enough force to push the slide to the rear. And that's why, especially 22 Magnums and pistols, you only see companies that are comfortable putting out firearms that are junk. Yes, you can argue the PMR-30, it has relatively good success. But like, take a look at this thing. We're talking about cast aluminum. It's just put together like garbage. AMT, they are comfortable putting out firearms that are going to have a high failure rate. Because you're right on the edge of how much force it takes to push this to the rear versus how much force it takes to hold this closed so it doesn't fire out of battery. I didn't actually get to see the Glock problem up close, but I'm assuming what they did is they lightened everything up and ran on the ragged edge of safety to where it's just about possible for it to come out of battery. Somebody put in a shell that was beyond their expectations and it was pushing the Glocks out of battery. They were exploding in the action, the Glock 22. So not only do you need to do that, You need to find that perfect balance, which a 22 long rifle has an excellent ratio. The amount of pressure to hold it closed isn't that much, and it creates enough thrust to where it has no problems pushing it all the way to the rear. This doesn't have that good a ratio. The force it would take to push it to the rear isn't enough to where they can put a heavy enough slide on here to keep it into battery. So you have two choices. You can either run on the ragged edge of safety, which I believe that was the problem that Arms Corps ran into with their 22 Magnum. Now, I tried finding like this on Google or something and getting some sort of data I could share with you. I heard the secondhand information. I heard that because they hit the market and then they were pulled right back off the market really quick. And I was told it was due to a safety issue. The only safety issue that would come from a 22 Magnum is it coming out of battery before the bullet's down the bore and exploding in your face. Was that the real problem? I don't know. They basically hit the market. A couple of YouTubers shot some videos with it, and then they were off the market for a couple of years. And now they're back on the market. Did they fix the issue? Who knows? So anyway, like with this one, from what I understand, it doesn't have a problem at all with them detonating out of battery. It has a problem returning all the way to the rear and cycling. But this company is okay with putting out firearms that have a high failure rate, so they put out a 22 Magnum pistol. Arms Corps, clearly comfortable with putting out firearms that have a high failure rate, so they put out a 22 Magnum pistol. Kel-Tec, well, it's Kel-Tec, and no matter what, with any of their firearms, it's always a gamble whether or not they're going to work. So for 22 mag pistols, I strongly recommend avoiding them. Just go 22 long rifle. And this is what people want anyway. They don't want this big Flash Gordon looking gun. They don't want... PMR 30 even looks like crap. It's not quite as bad, but they want something like this. This in 22 Magnum. That's what they're looking for. And you just can't do it. So anyway, I'm hoping the whiteboard of knowledge has cleared things up for a couple of people that weren't really sure. So again, just to recap, we need enough power to push the slide to the rear, but we still need enough force to hold the slide closed. That ratio doesn't come out well with a 22 Magnum. It just doesn't come out. And that's why they have problems with it. So unless the company is okay with putting out guns that are going to have a high failure rate, they just avoid that. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to check out any of my other videos, click on the links up here. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, that's right there. Don't forget to subscribe.